Morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's study. And we're going to continue looking at the book of Esther. But before we do, let's have a word of prayer. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, we once again invite your presence as we open your word together. We're thankful for each person that joins in these studies and for the time that we have together. We just pray that as we look at this history once again, that your Spirit can impress us and guide and lead in the things that we discuss, and that we can see much more clearly in the time that we are living in. We ask for this conviction and power in our lives from your word that is promised, and we ask that as we seek to obey your voice, that you can empower us, that we can reveal your character to others. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so yesterday we started looking at Esther again. Now, because we had gone through all of that history of the kings of Judah and Israel, and particularly in the last few months, dealing with the chronology of the 3 decrees, we have here the story of Esther that is between the 2nd and the 3rd decree. And we have all of these dates that we had marked under Cyrus's decree, with the Jews going back to Jerusalem and the laying of the foundation of the temple. We looked at the kings there of Cambyses and False Smyrtus, where the persecution begins against God's people who are building the temple. It begins actually even in the time of Cyrus. And then under Darius, they resume building the temple. They complete it. And then we have this history. So the temple was completed in 515. Its dedication was on March 12th, 515 BC. And here we're looking at 483. So we're looking at, yes, it would be what, 32 years. This is 32 years later. And we will look at these spans of time eventually as we go through that. Now, in Esther chapter 1, we were addressing this, which is in 483 BC. And particularly, we had looked at the first day of the first month as when this 180-day feast began, because it's going to be in connection with the start of the year. Which would make the most sense in the context of what Xerxes is doing. In King James called Ahasuerus, in the Hebrew called Ahasuerus, but some translations will actually put this as Xerxes. Now we know that Samuel Snow, using Prideaux, believed that it was reference to Artaxerxes Longinus, but we know specifically from history and all of the different archaeology, and also from the spirit of prophecy, that this is actually Xerxes. When we studied this before, we saw that this feast was when Xerxes was seeking support for the campaign against Greece, and that's going to be that famous battle of Thermopylae, where there's the 300 Spartans, sort of been idealized to some degree, but it's something that most people will know about. Well, maybe not most people, but a lot of people, they know about the Battle of Thermopylae, in which the Spartans held off the Persians, and then we're going to have this period of time after the Persians lose the war to Greece. In chapter 2, we have Xerxes once again, but this time he is looking for a queen. So he didn't replace Vashti immediately, because he's going to have that feast, the 7th day of the feast, which the rabbinic Jews quite clearly mark as being Sabbath. They don't tell you that it's the Day of Atonement, But if we work out from the first day of the first month that they began the 180 days of the feast, and then it's followed by a 7-day feast, that would place it as the 10th day of the 7th month on the biblical calendar. It's going to be the 9th day of the 7th month on the Babylonian calendar that's reconstructed Parker and Duberstein. Whether theirs is correct or not, I do know. But they reconstructed it based upon the observation of the new moon theoretically. Now, they always say that they could be a day off here or there. So they're not adamant about it being the 9th day of the 7th month, but it would be the 9th day of Tishridu on the Babylonian calendar. But on the biblical calendar, we know it would be the 10th day of the 7th month. It'd be the 187th day of the year. So this is going to be later that we're going to, so it's going to be about 10 years later, something like that. I'll have to look at the dates again, where, and there's a whole history that we looked into about Xerxes, what happens after the battle against Greece, and the timing of Esther being chosen to be queen. So how that all works out, we will go through some of that again to refresh our memory. I haven't looked at it yet, so, which I probably should have, but I don't remember specifically all the details of it, but we can reconstruct those details again. So it says after these things. Now, again, there is this word here. Every time you see this 1697, the word debar, right? So after this matter, or decree or word, right? Debar means it can be translated thing, word, decree, commandment. And so whether it means after these things or after some more specific thing, right? Now, I just want to look at the Hebrew here really quickly. So here it's going to be plural. That's what I want. So dabarim, right? So that's why they have it translated as things. So after these words, it could be translated as after these commandments, after these decrees, after these things. So it's a word by implication, a matter, as spoken of thing. So usually it has to do with something that's spoken, but obviously it has a wide way in which it's translated. So exactly what things are being talked about, it doesn't specifically tell us, right? So when it says after these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, let there be a fair young virgin sought for the king. Now, if somebody was just reading this, reading chapter 1 and then chapter 2, who didn't know any of this history, they would just think, well, this is just like, the next day or a few days later after he's no longer angry. Right? But this is a long time later, right? So we'll see how long this is. I just don't remember the dates here for this. And then we're going to have more dates. So there's going to be lots of dates in this story. Then said the king's servants and ministered unto him, let there be a fair young virgin sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the king's house of the women, unto the custody of Haggai, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the woman, and let their things be for purification. Let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so. Now, one of the things interesting about the book of Esther and the book of Daniel is, initially when you have skeptics who questioned these books, they would argue that these books are written much, much later, 2nd century BC. They're just kind of tales or stories. But the Persian words that occur in Esther and Daniel, which sort of be a very strong witness against that. And so right now we're just looking at the English translation, but I did some research in this in the past. I don't remember all of the details, but when they talk about these different terms that are going to be used for different offices and so forth, especially in the book of Daniel, you can see that they actually understand the Persian political structure, which somebody in the 2nd century BC would not understand. The Greek would use different words. And of course, this book is written in Hebrew, but also with the Apocryphal Esther is written in Greek and still has the correct terms. Anyway, then let the maiden which pleaseth the king, right? So we're going to have going to be this maiden being put as queen instead of Vashti. And the thing, that is the word, pleased the king, and he did so. Now in Shushan, the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Now, when we did this before, and Dwight did some research regarding this, so we have this descendant who's a son of Kish, obviously a Benjamite, and we know that Saul was also a descendant of Kish, right? So, and we can see here that, there's these Benjamites, Judah and Benjamin, end up being part of the southern kingdom. Occasionally, there are some people that are still trace themselves back to the northern 10 tribes. But Benjamin ends up being connected to Judah. So Judah and Benjamin are the two southern tribes. So here we see that Mordecai is connected to Saul. And then we're going to see his adversary Haman is connected to who? Do you remember?
Agag.
Yeah. So the king of Amalek, the Amalekite king, who ends up Saul has taken him captive, right, and doesn't kill him, right? So we're going to see that there's this situation that goes way back that the story of Esther has concealed within it that most people don't notice, is that it's still a confrontation between Amalek and Saul, right? That's connected. And there's significance in there, which I don't know if we fully decided on what it means and how it would apply in the present day. Okay, so so when it talks about here, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity, which had been carried away with Jeconiah. So we know Jeconiah, that's Jehoiachin, or Jehoiachin, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away. So he's also called Coniah. But Jehoiachin, I think that's right. I got that right? I always get these things mixed up, names and stuff. But that's I don't think that's let me see here. I'm just going to make sure I got this right. So son of Jehoiakim, yeah. So this is Jehoiachin, king of Judah, for 3 months and 10 days before he surrendered to Nebuchadnezzar and was taken captive to Babylon, where he was in prison for the next 36 years, released at the death of Nebuchadnezzar and lived in Babylon until his death. Right? So usually referred to as Jehoiachin. Okay. Yeah, so I got that right. I didn't get things mixed up. So that's going to be in 597 BC. So who was carried away captive in 597 BC in this list here? So we got Mordecai obviously was not carried away in 597 BC because this is, 470 something. So when it says a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, of Benjamin, would Jair be the one that was carried away captive? Obviously, it's not Kish, right? So we got here. So we have Mordecai. We have Jair. He enlightens a descendant of Manasseh who conquered many towns. There's different names. A Benjamite son of Kish, the father of Mordecai, right? the son of Shimei or Shimea. So again, there's lots of different people with these names. Benjamite, son of Kish, father of Jair, the grandfather of Mordecai, in the time of Esther. And then, so the question is, which one here in this list was the one that was carried away in 597? Would it have been his dad? Probably not. It would probably be Shimei, right? Definitely wouldn't be Kish, right? So sometimes it's not clear when we're looking at this and we're reading and we say, okay, who in this list is being referred to? Because definitely Mordecai was not carried away in 597, right? But Mordecai is the son of Jair, who's the son of Shimei. So Shimei would be the one that would have been carried away in 597, his grandfather. Right? It definitely wouldn't be Kish, because he's the father of Saul, or, he's descended from Kish. Right? So would people agree that it's probably referring to Shimei? Anybody with any thoughts on that? Nobody has any thoughts on it. I'm just looking at some of these commentators say. It says here, the identity of the name is not, however, sufficient proof of identity of person. The chronological statement who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, offers some difficulty from the captivity of Jeconiah in the year 599, which is actually 597, to the beginning of the reign of Xerxes in the year 486 is a period of 113 years. Hence, if Asher is referred to Mordecai, he would, even if carried into captivity as a child, by then have reached the age from 120 to 130 years. And as Esther was not made queen until the 7th year of Xerxes, that's it, the 7th year. So that's going to be 4 years later, would have become prime minister of the monarch at about the age of 125. Right? So some people try to say the last name Kish and understand that he was carried away with Jeconiah while his great-grandson Mordecai was born in captivity. In this case, Kish and Shimei must be regarded as the great-grandfather. Now, so you can see they go through all this different speculation and the different possibilities. But the most likely thing is that Shimei is a descendant of Kish, just as Saul was, and that Shimei, his grandfather, is the one that's taken captive. And that fits perfectly with the period of time. So if you're looking at 15 years, definitely, his grandfather probably was fairly young, right? He's going to be taken captive at that time. And so that fits in, is all we're trying to say. To try to say that it was Kish who was taken captive doesn't really make any sense to me. Because when you have a son of Kish, a Benjamite, then you're going to really come back to that same language we're dealing with Saul. Okay. Hopefully you guys agree.
Now,
okay, Dwight.
In the apocryphal portion,
yeah,
in the Greek, when we're dealing with that, we look at Mordecai being the son of Jarius, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish of the tribe of Benjamin.
Yeah, Jeri. Yeah, so J.R. and Jeri, that's just the Greek spelling of the name J.R.
Right. So does that help at all?
Well, it doesn't really change anything, no. So we would know that the one being taken captive at the time that Jeconiah or Jehoiachin was taken captive in 597 can't be a reference to Mordecai. And it wouldn't be a reference to his dad. It would be a reference to his grandfather had been carried away captive. Still a long time before, but that still would fit. And we're going to say that Mordecai's, he's not a young man, right? So, and I don't know if we look at those that came out of, because here he's still in Babylon, right? Right. So his grandfather was taken captive, maybe when a boy, right? He's raised in Babylon. Shimei, he's going to have a son named Shimei, and then Shimei, or pardon me, the other way around. It's Jair. So Shimei is taken captive. He has a son named Jair, and Jair is going to be the father of Mordecai, and that would work in that period of time, right? Okay. Does that make sense? Would you agree, Dwight?
I'm not going to disagree.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, it definitely can't be Kish that was taken captive.
No.
Right? Because just the language, Kish of the tribe of Benjamin, that would bring us back to Saul. We're not going to think this is some other Kish.
No, I think that this sets up.
We would try to distinguish it in some other way.
I'm thinking this just sets up the familial relationship.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But it would be Shimei that's taken captive. It definitely is not Mordecai. He wasn't taken captive in 597.
No.
Yeah. And it wouldn't make sense that it would be JR either. It would make sense that they go back to Shimei because he's the one that's taken captive, but they're going to give his family that he's of the son of Kish. He's of the line of Kish, of the tribe of Benjamin, which would be a definite reference to Saul's genealogy. Okay. But he's still in captivity. So he didn't go back under Cyrus's decree or Darius's decree. He's still going to be in Babylon. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So he's going to be adopting Hadassah. Now, interesting, and I don't know if we referenced this before, but Hadassah is 1919 in Hebrew. If we're looking at those that are in captivity, that didn't go back under the decrees, could this be a reference to the 1919 Bible conference?
That would be an interesting reference.
Yeah. It definitely would fit with how we understand this idea that the church is in Babylonian captivity, right? Because the Seventh-day Adventist Church is not Babylon, but it is captive to Babylon, that is to the Protestants. And the 1919 Bible Conference we used specifically to mark the beginning of the third generation of Adventism with the books of the New Order. And so that Hadassah here is the Hebrew number 1919 is interesting. Okay, so I don't think we noticed that before, or paid attention to it before. Maybe we did and I just forgot. It came to pass when the king's commandment, again, you have that word, the bar, right, and his decree. So you have this word or commandment, and then you have a decree, 1881, of uncertain, perhaps foreign derivation. So this seems to be actually a Persian word, dot, referring to an royal edict or statute, if I remember correctly. So that's one of those things that shows it's a Persian. You have this Persian influence on the book of Esther, which would be hard to explain in the 2nd century BC, but easy to explain in the 5th century. Okay. There's somebody who was connected to Persia. So it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace to the custody of Haggai. So that's the same. He just had a different spelling earlier. This chamberlain or eunuch. That Esther was brought also unto the king's house to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the woman. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens which were meet to be given her out of the king's house, and he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. Okay, so again, we get like we had before, dealing with uh, seven eunuchs and seven wise men. Now we got seven maidens, right? So we always have this number seven. I mean, Mordecai would be the third generation after Jeconiah and Shimei's captivity. Yeah, so just she's referring to if the 1919 is the third generation of Adventism, right? Which we believe it is, from 1919 to 1957, 1957 marking the beginning of the fourth generation, then these are the third generation, right? So now, I guess it depends. How do you count this? So if you're going to count the generation of Shimei, then you have Jair and then Mordecai. But that means Esther would be the fourth generation if you're counting it that way. Now, any thoughts on that? How we would count these generations? So that would be the fourth. She would be the fourth generation,
All right.
and that would fit with what we understand about that the time of the end occurs in the fourth generation. So she would end up marking that fourth generation in that context. But she's also marking the third generation as well with 1919. So I don't know, but you could argue she's the third generation raised in Babylon, right? Because that'd be J.R. Mordecai, and then he's the uncle. So whether that's probably through his brother, I would think. But it could have been through his sister. It could be the mother of Hadassah. I'm not sure. It doesn't tell us. Um, but I would think usually it would be the responsibility of the brother to adopt the daughter. That would be more patriarchal rather than matriarchal. But anyway, we don't know. Okay, and then she's going to have these seven maids being given to her, maidens, out of the king's house, and he preferred her and her maids into the best uh, place of the house of women. Now, preferred her and her maids, that means he basically gave them the best room or whatever. I would think that's what it means. The best, the place is added, but the best of the house of women. So they got the best place to stay, I guess. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. So Esther is not revealing who that she's a Jew, right? So it's just not known.
Agreed.
And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the woman's house to know how Esther did and what would become of her. Now, it's kind of interesting that this happens. This story occurs by these people that are in captivity. That a Jewish woman is going to end up becoming the queen of Persia. So obviously, it's in God's providence. Now, for the Jews that are in Persia, in this Persian kingdom, which Persia, of course, is in charge of Babylon as well, but this is actually not in Babylon, right? But like the city of Babylon, and Mordecai is pretty involved in taking care of Esther or Hadassah, wanting to know what's going to happen. Now, so I don't know particularly how they're doing spiritually. It seems that there's some belief in God, obviously, but they're still in captivity. So they would represent Adventism in some way, right? So, and we've dealt with this before. But there are other applications that we could make. But I think that it represents basically Adventism in the third and fourth generation. Okay. Now, when every maid's turn was come to go into king, Ahasuerus or Xerxes, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of women, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women. So now, as far as these different types of purification, so the Persians, their religion is Zoroastrianism. Okay, so we know that the kings of Persia, taking over Babylon, end up, acknowledging the Babylonian gods, even though that's not really their religion. But they have to do that to appease the people. But here in this situation, this is going to be in Shushan, right? Susa. And so these would probably be some practices connected with Zoroastrianism. Okay. So she's being subjected to these different types of purification. So nothing to do with Jewish purification. Right? This is basically pagan practices, whatever they mean. But this is what Esther is involved in, right? So this would not be a good thing. Now, we discussed before about back in 2015, Jeff had taken, that Esther symbolizes, the righteous, and Vashti the wicked, and people left the movement because of that. But here we still, if we're just looking at this in this plain way, we can see if this is representing Adventism, that these purifications are not purifications according to God's law, right? Adventism is in spiritual darkness. They are in captivity, right? In the third and fourth generation. And so the story of Esther has to do with the repetition of the first, second, and third angels' messages in our history in the fourth generation, right? So that generation that had gone into darkness because of the compromise with the Protestants, it's going to be that fourth generation that's going to have this repeat of history. So that's what we've already taught, and that's what we see in this story. Now, of course, our main thing that we're trying to do here is understand the chronology of this, but we still have to address these points. And there's still probably lots that we miss. And thus came every maiden unto the king, and whatsoever she desired was given her, to go with her out of the house of the woman unto the king's house. And in the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shaashgaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. And she came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, that she was called by name. Okay, so what's happening here? So she's gone through this year, and now she's going to be a concubine, right? She's not picked as queen yet.
Correct.
Okay. Now, when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abigail, the uncle of Mordecai, Abihail, I guess. So this guy, Abihail, it means the father of might, or the possessor of might. So name of 3 Israelites and 2 Israelitesses. So yeah, Abihail, it's the same as Abigail. The uncle of Mordecai. So that's Mordecai's. Okay, so this is Mordecai's uncle. Okay, so Esther's the daughter of Abigail, uncle of Mordecai. So Mordecai is he a cousin or an uncle of Esther? Am I getting that right? Go back. Right. We brought up that is his uncle's daughter. So that would mean that's his cousin. So he's not an uncle of Esther. He's a cousin of Esther. So they would be the same generation. Like they would both be the third generation. Or is it that this word uncle, father's brother, right? It's dod, which is more a term of love, right? But it does mean uncle as well. So I'm not sure specifically what the relationship is. Okay, so I have to think about that. So it just repeats this in 2:15. So now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abigail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the woman, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal on the 10th month, which is the month Tevet, right, in the 7th year of his reign. So remember in chapter 1, that's going to be in the 3rd year of his reign. So this is in the 7th year of his reign and in the 10th month. Okay, so that's 10th month, usually it's around what we would call, January. Crosses usually December to January somewhere. We can look at this specifically for that year. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight, more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes, unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. So it doesn't give us a specific day, but it does give a 10 and a 7. So what would we have in the 7th year in the 10th month? What is that symbolizing? So they're first cousins according to Ai, Stephen says. Okay. So it's definitely possible. I mean, in just the plain language of it. But sometimes it's not always clear in the Hebrew, right? So it's not always clear what these relationships are. Okay, so I'm looking here. I got to get to the 7th year. Okay, so this is going to be in 479 is 7th month. So the 10th month is going to begin on December 22nd on the Julian calendar in 479, and it's going to span to January 20th, 478 BC. Right? So that would be somewhere in that span. So between December 22nd and January 20th. I'm just checking on here. So that's going to be the same on the Babylonian calendar in Tevet. Okay, so we got this 10 and 7. So would that relate to as a symbol of the Day of Atonement, right?
That can work.
I was also thinking the 10 could parallel a test, and the 7 could be the completion, like she passed that test.
Yeah, well, it could, which is what the 10th day of the 7th month symbolizes. Day of Atonement is the passing of the test and completion. So, but yeah, it would be connected. So we got, anyway, so we're looking at just at the change from 479 to 478 BC, somewhere in there, that she becomes the queen. And when the virgins had gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. And Esther had not yet showed her kindred, nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai. Now, it's a different word than debar. This is amar. So it's like an edict, commandment, decree, like as when she was brought up with him. So she's going to obey his voice. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, 2 of the king's chamberlains, Bigtan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth and sought to lay hand on the king of Ahasuerus. And the thing, that is the debar, the word, was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen, and Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, It was found out. Therefore, they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. Now, we did some, what we'll use the word speculation on this. So we have two of these eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh. So they had, sought to lay a hand on King Xerxes, right? Now the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther. So he knows about the fact that they're upset with Xerxes for some reason. He's going to tell Esther about this, and she's going to tell the king about it. And they do an investigation, and these are both going to be hanged, and it's going to be written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. So there's going to be a record made of this. Now, we made some speculation regarding Haman's involvement in this in some way, right? Which we saw later sort of inferenced in regard to this, so that there's so that Mordecai and it's going to be, when Mordecai is going to be honored, it's because the king goes through and reads about this story and says, what was anything done for him, right? So there's some speculation on our part exactly whether Haman had anything to do with this incident in which Mordecai reports this to Esther, and then Esther to Xerxes. So there's probably something there, maybe even more that we could see from that part of the story. But anyway, it's an interesting detail that usually is just passed over. So after these things did Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seal above all the princes that were with him. So again, we have this sort of vague, and after these things, just like we do in chapter 2, after these things, how long after, it doesn't particularly say, right? So in chapter 2, if you say after these things, well, the whole thing's, obviously it's not just chapter 1, there's other things. So we don't know how long this is, particularly that Haman is promoted. And if there's any connection between Haman's promotion and what happened with Bigthan and Teresh, I think their names were. Anyway, these chamberlains who get hung. All the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Now, we have this word reverence, which we've looked at this Hebrew number before, but 7812 has all the digits of July 18, 2020. It's shakah, it is to depress, that is to prostrate, especially reflexively to homage, so to bow down. Now, of course, there's a number of words that have those Hebrew words that have those 4 digits. This word shakah occurs lots. It's a really common Hebrew word, right? So we've seen it in other places. Particularly, we noted it regarding stories with David and Saul. Right? So there were some places there that we ran into that. But anyway, it's just here we take note of it. Some of these Hebrew numbers that are common. The other thing about Haman is his name is 2001. So if we have Xerxes, and whoever Xerxes is representing in this context, of however we interpret this story, how we place it on a line, he's going to have Haman reverenced, and Haman is 2001. So anything about 2001? Anything happen in 2001?
Sure.
What?
Well, we know that the church accepted the teachings of spiritual formation.
Yeah, and something else happened in that same year. But yeah, so September 11th, 2001. And we know in September of 2001, the church takes the position with the evangelicals that in order for our institutions to receive accreditation by evangelical churches, we have to teach spiritual formation to our ministers, right?
If you're going to be a minister, an administrator, or a teacher within the Seventh-day Adventist system, you must undergo the teachings of spiritual formation.
Because we want to be accredited by Protestant colleges.
But
That's
it's always been interesting to me, because in this area, the group that oversees the accreditation is Gonzaga University, a Jesuit college.
Okay. Yeah, why we would even care about being accredited by other institutions, I guess, what would be the reason? Why wouldn't we need accreditation? So that our ministers could be ministers in other people's churches? Which wouldn't happen.
Well, the purpose that they've looked at for this with accreditation is that so that the degrees that are offered are seen as being quote unquote legitimate.
So that is, if I want to take courses at other schools,
right,
or people from other churches want to take courses at our schools, they get credit for those courses. Is it accreditation or accreditation?
Accreditation.
Accreditation? I've never pronounced it that way. Yeah, you're probably right.
That's the correct
accreditation. Accreditation.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's accreditation. Okay. So anyway, that would be the reason, so that you take courses, they're transferable to other institutions. Now, the thing is, we wouldn't need accreditation if we could acknowledge courses that people take in other institutions. So if I went to an Adventist university, they could take into account my degree that I got at Concordia in Edmonton, right? They could take that into account. But if we weren't accredited, if the Adventist, I can't remember what they call the one in Alberta anymore, they changed the name, but it used to be CUC. So back then, if I had a degree from CUC and they weren't accredited, then I wouldn't be able to transfer those courses over to Concordia. If I went to like a Concordia seminary or something, right? So people want to have the universities accredited so that when you take a course at an Adventist institution, you can transfer those credits over to and complete a degree in another institution. So that's why they want accreditation. But now it also has to do with funding, Kelly says. I don't know what kind of funding happens. I mean, Adventist institutions are extremely expensive to go to. I know when I got my degree at Concordia, if I had gone to CUC, it would have cost 10 times as much. I don't know if they think that makes you 10 times wiser. But I could never see myself going to an Adventist university or college for just the extreme prices that they charge, which doesn't really seem to make any sense to me. So if they're getting funding from the government, I don't know what all that funding goes to, because the professors don't get paid that much. Nobody gets paid that much. So I'm not really sure what it's all about. But that's probably just my ignorance, Maybe they just don't get as much funding as other institutions. All I do know is that the more funding that goes from the government into universities in Canada, the more expensive they become. That if the government wasn't involved in education at all, universities would be relatively inexpensive. So people always want government funding, but government funding increases costs. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So anyway, we just take note about Haman that his name is 2001. And I think that's probably providential in that sense. Though he's unhappy that Mordecai does not bow or give him reverence. So he's full of wrath, and he sought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai, so whoever they were. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. So Mordecai recognizes, or Haman recognizes that Mordecai is a Jew, and that's probably the reason he doesn't give him reverence. And so he wants to destroy all of the people of Mordecai. That seems a little bit extreme, to hold a whole nation accountable for the actions of one man, except that, he probably recognizes that this is something about the Jews, that they don't acknowledge the things that Haman wants them to acknowledge, the worldly principles. It says, in the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus. So we had the 7th year of Ahasuerus, and that would have been, in 479, 478. Now we're going to have in the first month of Nisan, in the 12th year. So this is going to be how much later?
Almost another 5 years, isn't it?
Going to be just a bit over 4 years, right? Because from the 10th month to the first month is 2 or 3 months, depending on the year. And so you're at the end of the 7th year. Now you're beginning of the 12th year. So yeah, it's 5 years if you just did a regular count from the 7th to the 12th. But it's basically 4 years and 2 or 3 months, right? Depending on exactly where in the 10th month. And it doesn't tell us it's we're going to see here how this is done. Right? We've done it before, but pay attention to this casting of lots here. So in the first month, that is in the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is lots. Now, this Hebrew word pur is where we get Purim, right? And in this case, it is just the singular, I believe, and it's going to be mentioned only in the book of Esther. So it comes from 6331, pur, to crush, break, to bring to naught, utterly to take. So exactly why they use the word crush for casting of lots, and we looked into this before, on the fault that is, so different people have different ways in which they decide what actually this means. How do they cast lots? But the word nafal means to fall, lots of different applications. So they're going to cause to fall the lot that is the lot. So the pur, they're going to have pur, and then they're going to say is the lot 1486. So 1486, goral, that is a pebble. So we have the one word, the pur, which is basically the act of casting pebbles, right? So some kind of pebble. So some people say it's like dice or something like that, or throwing stones into a box, or different diagrams. There's different theories about it. So they're going to cast these lots before Haman, from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. Now, when we first studied this in this movement, the suggestion is that for a whole year, they cast lots every day and every month, all the way to the 12th month. Now, does that make sense to people? That was the way the movement first interpreted this. So we got Daniel 11:14. Angela, just because the word fall, What is it that you're looking at, Daniel 11:14?
I was thinking of robbers of thy people, and meaning breakers of thy people.
Oh, for the crushing part?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that would be related. And also remember, it's the sons of the robbers of thy people. So the robbers of thy people is Babylon. The sons of the robbers of thy people is Rome. They're the ones that inherit Babylon. Okay. But anyway, yeah, okay. So that's what you're referring to. Yeah, I don't know if I make that application there. But so when it comes to the casting of lots, the idea is that they're going to say, when is the time? They're looking for the auspicious time in which to, bring out a decree for revenge, right? So he's looking for, he's not going to be doing this every day for 12 months. It's just that they're casting to try to figure out which day, right? So they're going to look at all the dates on a calendar, both the days. So they're going to cast for which day of the month, and then they're going to cast for which month. Okay, that would to me to make the most sense. But initially in the movement, they thought they did this for like a whole year, which would make no sense because you're trying to find the auspicious day. What date do we want? So however they figure it out, they're going to figure, okay, which day of the month. It's going to be the 13th day, and then you figure out which month it's going to be the 12th month. Okay, so they do this for a month, going all the way, testing each of the months, all the way up to the 12th month. Now, in this year, so when we look at this particular year, this is going to be the 12th year, right? So we had the 7th year, and we'll end up putting these things all on a line when I get a chance. So the 12th year is going to be, if we go all the way back to the first month, so the first day of the first month in the 12th year of Xerxes, so Nisanu 1, is April 5th, 474. So the idea is that they're going to, at the beginning of that year, whether they start on the first month, it doesn't say, but I would think that it's probably going to be on the first day of the first month. So this is just a guess. It could have been any time in the month, but it makes sense that they're going to count for each of these months, and they want to find a date, right, that they're going to get revenge. Now, in that particular year, there's actually going to be a 13th month on the Babylonian calendar. So why did they not count, and on the biblical calendar as well? Why didn't they count up to the 13th month? Why are they just going to look up to the 12th month? They're going to figure out which day and which month, but they're only going to count up to the 12th month. They're not going to take into account there's going to be a 13th month that year. Why is that? Do they know there's going to be a 13th month?
I think they know it's possible, but they may not have accepted that it could occur at that point.
Yeah, so they don't know if it can occur in that, right? That maybe there could be a 13th month. Now, if they thought about it, they could probably figure that there's going to be, February 24th is the start of the month Adar, right? So, but if you go to the start of the 13th month, that's going to be March 24th on the Julian, but March 19th on the Gregorian. So it's actually pretty close to where you almost don't need a 13th month, right? So they don't actually know, right, if there's going to be a 13th month or not, because it's extremely close. And you would need to wait until the spring. So one is, we know that they probably don't have a calculated calendar, and we know that they don't. but this would be evidence of it, that they haven't determined when they're going to add the extra month yet. And now, if they had ephemeris, they might be able to figure that out. But even then, it would be still fairly close because it depends upon observation. So they would have to observe that. So that means on the night of the 18th, you would look at the sunset, right? And you would see the visible crescent, right? So the day before, and that's going to be on the 29th day of, let me see here, how's it? At the 29th day of Adar, right? So you don't know, because on the 29th of Adar, it could be cloudy, right? And so you would add an extra day. And so it ends up being pretty close, is all I'm trying to say here. So it's not a given that there's going to be an extra month from the perspective if you're at the beginning of that year and you're going to be casting these lots. So this is in 474 in the spring. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there's a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all of the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. Okay? And if it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have charge of the business to bring it into the king's treasuries. So, he's really set on revenge here, and he's willing to pay for it. Now the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the Jews' enemy, right? So that means he's the descendant of Agag, right? This is the enemy of Saul, right? So we got Mordecai. So we have Saul and Agag typifying Mordecai and Haman, right? And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. So the silver is, so he's going to give all of the silver. He's offering to pay 10,000 talents of silver. But the king is going to, and I don't fully understand what's here, but he said the silver is given to the people also to do with them as it seemeth good. So he's just saying, take the money and use it in this cause. Then the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, in the name of King Ahasuerus was it written, and sealed with the king's ring. So we're going to see the 13th day of the first month. So we know it was before the 13th day of the first month that they started counting these lots, or casting these lots. And now they're on the 13th day of the first month, they're going to issue this decree. And the letters were sent by post to all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish. So, it's sort of a threefold punishment. You get to destroy, kill, and cause to perish. It seems like you don't need all of those things. So destroy, to bring to naught, to kill, to smite, and to cause to perish. To wander away, to lose oneself by invocation, to perish, destroy. Obviously, they're going to be killed. All the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, to take the spoil of them for a prey. So they get to spoil them as well, right? Now, here we have Bazaz and Shalal. So what does this Shalal and Bazaz remind us of, the spoil and prey?
Maher-Shalal-Hashbaz.
Yeah, Maher-Shalal-Hashbaz. Yeah. Yeah, if I was going to have any more kids, that's what I would name my next son. Um, right. So that's Hashbaz part. That's the Bazaz, and then you got this Shalal, Mahar, Shalal, Hashbaz. So the spoil and the prey are basically the same word. So it doesn't have the hasten part, quick to the prey, or hasten to the spoil, quick to the prey, whatever, however you translate it. There's sort of a repetition of the same idea. But spoil and prey are put together here. So it brings us back to that symbol. And we remember that Maher-Shalal-Hashbaz had to do with the prophetic mirror, right? Because he's going to write this on a mirror. So there's some connection here to that part of this message. So the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all the people that they should be ready against that day. And the post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was perplexed. So to involve, to entangle, to perplexed. Book is the word. Okay. Now, of course, we've gone through this chronology before. I've got some charts here we can look at. Put some of these dates visually before us. Okay, that's a little too soon. Okay, here I have on the bottom Xerxes' accession. That's going to be in 486. First year of his reign begins in 485. Right, third year 483. The Persian campaign against Greece was in the sixth year of his reign. He's going to get back at somewhere around 480, 479. And then there's going to be this period of time in which Esther is purified. So that would be somewhere, basically, it's almost the whole year of 479. And then in the seventh year, that's when she's crowned. Now, so we went through this and how we did this. It's we can see that's how it works. Okay, and then you're going to have the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th year. She's just the queen, right? Nothing particular happens of any note, other than we know somewhere in here Mordecai is going to uncover this plot with Bigthan and Teresh, and they're going to get hanged after he reports this to Esther and she tells it to Xerxes. Okay, so Angela says at least 127 copies of the death decree. Okay, well, at least, yeah, so just the symbol of 127, the 12, and the 7. Obviously, inversion of that is July 21st. Yeah, so just some notes there. Okay, so now we have this year, and we're going to look at this a bit more in detail. But we have the first day of the first month, April 5th, 474 BC. We have the casting of lots that occurs. Then the decree is given on the 13th day of the first month, April 17th. We'll deal with these 3 days and stuff, tomorrow, because we're going to deal with Mordecai getting honored, Haman hanged, how that ends up being connected. And then there's going to be Esther's decree later. But the decree is going to go into effect on the 13th day of the 12th month, in the 12th year. And we noted that 13 times 12 times 12, that's just simply 144 times 13, is going to give you 1872. And that's going to go into effect on March 7th. Okay. Is there any significance of March 7th?
The Sunday law 321.
Yeah. So I end up dealing with that as well in a diagram. Okay. So we got that 12th year. Lots of stuff happens in that 12th year. The decree is issued. The decree goes into effect. and then I just expand it in this other diagram. And so the death decree is in 473. Then we also have at the top, we dealt with Amalek's birth, approximately 260 years to Amalek attack in 1533, the prophecy against Amalek in 1493, then the 400 years, which I mark, it's 1093 BC, where Saul, Kish, and Agag, Amalek, have that, and then there's 619 years to 474 BC. Right, 620 if we go to 473. But we'll just look at 474. Right. We notice Shimei, that is Kish's captivity in 597, and 123 years. So that definitely fits with being his grandfather that's taken into captivity in 597. Okay, so what else here? So, I mean, we're going to go over, obviously, more of this history. There's lots of interesting little details, like the 323 days, symbolizing the 23rd day of the third month. On June 25th, symbolizing the 256 days. We also have 66 days in there. So we'll have to look at that in a bit more detail. Now then, we will take these dates and we'll put them within this whole realm, the whole range of the dates of the three decrees, and see what kind of structures maybe show up in that context. See what these other diagrams are. Yeah, so this is the one where I take Haman's decree. So between March 7th, 473 BC and March 7th, 321 AD is 793 years. It's 289,643 days. We get Constantine's Sunday law. The thing that I found interesting about this, if you take March 27th or March 7th, 2021, so 321, but by 21, 3 times 7 times 21 is 444, and 12 times 7 times 3, that is, if I invert the 21, I get 252. So I get a mirror of 144, and I get 252, dealing with it that way. But the other thing that was really interesting had to do with the ratio between March 7th, 2021, at the time when we were studying this, and March 7th, 473 and 321, that is, the ratio is pi between these different spans of time. So we take the 289,643 days and the 620,912 days. And so I add that up, and then I take divided by 28. It should be 289,000. So anyway, it's just the ratio between that. I put my comma in the wrong spot. There you go. So the ratio is pi, 3.1437 to be exact, but not exactly pi, but close to pi. March 7th is the 66th day of the year, right? And things like that. Okay. It's automatically saving. Okay. Don't have to worry about clicking save anymore. Okay. So any final thoughts before we close with prayer? And I'll try to get some of this a bit more organized at some point. Yeah. Well, let's close with prayer. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for the time that we have had. We ask for your blessing upon this day, for your angels' care and protection, and that your Holy Spirit can continue to work upon our hearts. Help us to submit our lives to you. And May your angels watch over our family and friends and those that we come in contact. May your Holy Spirit go before us, and may we reveal your character. Bring us together again to study these things is our prayer in Jesus' name.